They told you Pinocchio was just a harmless children's story, but what if that was the greatest lie of all? The macabre, esoteric secrets of Pinocchio reveal something darker, hidden codes, forbidden symbols, and occult truths buried inside the tale of a wooden boy. This isn't about fairy tales, it's about you, your soul, and the strings you don't even know are pulling you. Forget the innocent bedtime story. This is a conspiracy wrapped in wood and painted with smiles, a ritual disguised as a fable. And the deeper we dig, the more we uncover the dark truth of Pinocchio and the hidden meaning behind every character, every trial, every mask of light and shadow. If you're ready to see beyond the surface, to uncover what the elites never wanted you to know about occult fairy tales explained, then stay with me until the end. You will never look at Pinocchio the same way again. And before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell, because here we reveal what others are too afraid to say. Don't just watch, be part of this journey into the forbidden. What if the tale of Pinocchio was never meant to be a harmless story for children, but instead a coded ritual about the imprisonment of the soul? Within the macabre truth of Pinocchio lies an unsettling allegory, a wooden boy that represents humanity itself, lifeless, controlled, desperate for freedom. Through esoteric fairy tale analysis, one can see that the puppet isn't innocent. It's a reflection of our own condition. Just as Pinocchio is tied to strings, people are bound by invisible chains, social norms, hidden fears, and ancient systems of control. This is where Pinocchio occult symbolism reveals itself, pulling us into a story that was never truly designed for bedtime comfort. The esoteric hidden messages Pinocchio carries become clearer when we examine how he struggles to become real. Every stumble, every misstep, echoes the struggles of the soul trapped in matter. Puppet occult rituals aren't just theatrical metaphors, they suggest that humanity itself might be part of a larger initiation, a cosmic play where free will is an illusion. Think about how often one feels guided by forces unseen, desires that seem planted, choices that feel predestined. That is the dark truth of Pinocchio, a reminder that what we call freedom may be nothing more than a carefully written script. Consider for a moment the image of wood. In Pinocchio, hidden meaning, wood isn't just a material, it is a prison. It is matter, dead, rigid, shaped by someone else's hands. The puppet, carved by Geppetto, mirrors the way souls are shaped by forces far greater than themselves. This speaks directly to Pinocchio and soul imprisonment, a metaphor that cuts deeper than most dare to admit. How many of us walk through life as wooden bodies, animated by borrowed energy, with no idea of the strings that guide us? This is what occult fairy tales explained often reveal, truths hidden under a childish disguise. And then there's the element of lies. Pinocchio's nose grows, not just as a childish warning, but as a symbol of deception's power. The trickster archetype in Pinocchio shows that dishonesty is not simply wrong, it is part of an initiation, a trial of truth. Like Hermes, Loki, or Eshu, Pinocchio embodies a chaos bringer. This Pinocchio trickster archetype exposes how illusions must first be lived through before they are transcended. How often do people deceive themselves just to later face a painful awakening? Lies stretch, distort, and eventually reveal the prison we built with our own words. The macabre truth of Pinocchio becomes even more apparent when we see how his journey mirrors ours. Every lie, every mistake, every fall into temptation leads him not to punishment but to transformation. This is the essence of esoteric origins of Pinocchio. The puppet story is not a tale of morality, but of initiation. Those who can read between the lines begin to see Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation, where the wooden boy represents the human soul navigating a labyrinth of deception, control, and hidden trials. In this labyrinth, the blue fairy occult meaning, the whale, and even Geppetto himself become archetypes of forces guiding and testing the initiate. It is easy to laugh at a puppet, but harder to realize that the laughter hides a ritual. Pinocchio Conspiracy Explained shows how a seemingly innocent children's book encoded layers of Freemason symbolism. Why would a story for children be filled with such heavy imagery of death, transformation, and temptation? This is the forbidden symbolism in fairy tales. Truths so dangerous they had to be disguised as play. Parents thought they were reading a fable. In reality, they were passing down ancient codes about spirit and matter. And so, the tale survived, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the curious to dig deeper. The puppet was never innocent, and neither are we. That's the terrifying recognition. Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism doesn't just point outward, it points inward. Every time he longs to be real, he mirrors our restless hunger for authenticity, for a freedom that feels forever out of reach. Isn't that the same longing that drives humanity into philosophies, religions, or even esoteric paths? The occult archetypes in Pinocchio whisper that the boy's story is ours, a mirror meant to haunt us. And just as the puppet dances without knowing who pulls the strings, so too do we, until we start to ask who built the theater in the first place, and why. Carlo Collodi, the man behind Pinocchio, is often remembered as a simple writer of children's tales, but whispers suggest otherwise. His Italy was a crucible of political upheaval, secret societies, and occult currents flowing just beneath the surface. In that climate, could a story like Pinocchio truly be innocent? Pinocchio occult symbolism points to more than wood and lies. It points to a landscape where Freemasons and visionaries experimented with forbidden knowledge. This isn't just about a puppet, it's about the hand that carved him and the currents that inspired the carver. When you look at Collodi through this lens, the Pinocchio esoteric secrets no longer seem accidental. The 19th century in Italy was marked by revolutions, wars of independence, and a silent battle for the soul of the nation. It was also an era when esoteric societies held enormous influence, shaping intellectuals and artists alike. Pinocchio's hidden meaning begins to unravel when one understands that Collodi himself was rumored to be aligned with Freemasonic circles. Symbols of transformation, initiation, and soul imprisonment run like veins through his story. If Collodi was indeed influenced by those currents, then the dark truth of Pinocchio is not only intentional, but carefully designed. Like an architect hiding codes within stone, he hid mysteries within a fairy tale. Think of it. Why would a story for children be filled with archetypes of death, rebirth, and temptation? Pinocchio Freemason symbolism may hold the answer. Freemasons often used allegory to preserve forbidden symbolism in fairy tales, disguising sacred rituals as harmless stories. Collodi may have crafted Pinocchio as a ritual drama of the soul, where every trial reflects stages of initiation. The esoteric origins of Pinocchio therefore echo not only Italy's hidden societies, but also a universal desire to encode wisdom where only the initiated could see. After all, what better way to preserve secrets than in the mouths of children who wouldn't question them? And yet, there is a subtle rebellion in Collodi's work. Instead of presenting obedience and conformity as virtues, Pinocchio resists, stumbles, and struggles. This rebellion reflects esoteric hidden messages Pinocchio carries, the soul's refusal to be confined to the puppet strings of authority. It's as if Collodi's own experience with secret societies bled into his writing, giving life to a story that mocks conventional morality while whispering deeper truths. Have you noticed how Pinocchio never truly fits the mold expected of him? That archetype mirrors humanity's own restlessness under systems of control. The puppet refuses to simply behave. When we examine Collodi through the lens of history, the puppet's role becomes clearer. Pinocchio Conspiracy Explained shows how the book emerged not from an isolated imagination, but from a society where hidden influences shaped literature and politics alike. The Italy of Collodi's time was drenched in occult debates, and the church itself struggled against secret fraternities. Within this climate, could Pinocchio's story really be just entertainment? The macabre truth of Pinocchio suggests it was instead a daring act of transmission, a way to pass along dangerous codes under the guise of a bedtime tale. For those who've studied Gnostic traditions, this hidden context becomes even more striking. Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation frames the puppet as the soul lost in matter, manipulated by demiurgic forces. Collodi's environment gave him access to these ideas, whether directly or indirectly. Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism, then, is not the product of chance, but of deliberate weaving. The blue fairy, the whale, the lies, all appear as occult archetypes designed to awaken, not entertain. Esoteric fairy tale analysis shows how such stories served as initiation tools, guiding seekers through allegory toward uncomfortable truths. And so, Collodi's shadow looms over every page of Pinocchio. His pen carved more than a boy. It carved a mirror of the soul's imprisonment. The puppet's trials are not random. They are ritualistic echoes of Collodi's esoteric landscape. If his Italy was haunted by hidden hands, then the puppet's strings were bound to reflect them. The forbidden symbolism in fairy tales lives on in Pinocchio, reminding us that even the most innocent stories can carry dangerous currents. And once you see those currents, you can't help but wonder what other tales may be hiding truths disguised as fantasy. Wood is never just wood in Pinocchio. When you peel back the layers, Pinocchio's hidden meaning reveals wood as a metaphor for inert flesh, stiff, lifeless, shaped by forces beyond its control. Humanity, in this reading, is the puppet, carved bodies animated by something foreign, trapped in matter without memory of freedom. Pinocchio's esoteric secrets whisper that the puppet's very texture, the rigidity of his body, is a symbol of the soul's imprisonment. People go about their days, unaware that their movements are bound by invisible strings. This isn't fantasy, it's a mirror. The dark truth of Pinocchio is that the puppet is us. Every time Geppetto carves a limb, it echoes the way society carves identities into us. Just as the puppet cannot choose his shape, we too are molded by culture, tradition, and expectation. Puppet occult rituals hide in this image, the act of carving as a ritual of shaping souls for conformity. Pinocchio occult symbolism invites us to ask, how much of who we are is truly ours? How much is simply carved into us by others? This is why esoteric fairy tale analysis matters. It reveals the macabre truth of Pinocchio as more than a story. It is a coded initiation into recognizing our prison. Think about it. Wood is dead. It once lived, but now stands rigid, its energy drained. In esoteric hidden messages, Pinocchio, this becomes a chilling metaphor for human bodies. Animated, but temporary vessels. The puppet dances, but only when strings move him. Isn't that strikingly similar to how people move through routines, guided by scripts they didn't write? Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism cuts deep here, suggesting that to be human is to live in a wooden shell, pretending to be alive until something awakens. And yet, as with Pinocchio and soul imprisonment, the question lingers, what awakens us? Wood also carries ancient symbolic weight. In occult traditions, wood was used for idols, vessels, and talismans. In Pinocchio occult symbolism, the wooden body isn't neutral. It is sacred and cursed at once. It can channel life, but it can also confine it. Pinocchio's Gnostic interpretation shows that the soul doesn't belong to this rigid body. It's trapped in it, like light inside stone. The puppet becomes an icon of that entrapment. Imagine how differently we'd view ourselves if we realized we are the same. Souls carved into wooden shells, waiting for liberation. That's the haunting undertone of the macabre truth of Pinocchio. When the puppet stumbles, falls, or breaks, it echoes how fragile matter really is. Pinocchio Conspiracy Explained reveals that his struggles are not random. They are coded reminders of the body's weakness. Humanity worships strength, beauty, and vitality, but Pinocchio's wooden body shows that all flesh cracks under time. His awkward movements become metaphors for the limitations of incarnation. Pinocchio's esoteric secrets remind us that we are not here to perfect the wood, but to transcend it. And yet, most remain polishing the puppet, forgetting that the strings themselves remain. One might ask, why wood and not clay, as in older myths? Perhaps because wood carries the duality of being alive and dead. It once grew, reached for light, and now lies inert, reshaped into something else. Pinocchio occult symbolism thrives in this paradox. The puppet's body is dead matter, but it mimics life. Isn't that exactly what humanity does? We move, laugh, desire, but beneath it all lies mortality. Esoteric origins of Pinocchio suggest that Collodi knew this duality well and hid it within his fable, making every splinter and crack an occult archetype in Pinocchio. The prison of matter is not a comfortable thought, but that's precisely why it's powerful. Pinocchio's hidden meaning urges us to confront the uncomfortable, that we may be souls trapped in shells carved by unseen hands. This isn't about scaring us, it's about awakening us to look beyond the wood. The blue fairy occult meaning, the whale's belly, even the trickster nose all emerge from this wooden foundation. The puppet's body sets the stage for every trial to come. And once we recognize that the puppet's flesh is our own, The story begins to feel less like a fairy tale and more like a warning. Pinocchio's nose has been laughed at for generations, yet behind the humor lies one of the deepest symbols of the tale. In Pinocchio occult symbolism, the nose that stretches with lies isn't just a warning to children, it's a signpost of the trickster archetype. Tricksters in mythology, whether Hermes stealing cattle, Loki sowing chaos, or Eshu twisting paths, always embody deception as a tool of transformation. Through Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation, the boy's lies reveal more than morality. They mark the necessary trial of truth that every soul must endure. The dark truth of Pinocchio is that deception is a mirror we must face before freedom is even possible. In esoteric fairy tale analysis, the trickster isn't the villain but the catalyst. Pinocchio's dishonesty forces him into situations where he confronts the cost of illusion. Similarly, life often presents us with lies we tell ourselves. I'm fine. I'll change tomorrow. This is who I am. These daily falsehoods stretch out like his nose, making it impossible to ignore. Pinocchio esoteric secrets reveal that these lies are not accidents. They're initiatory fire. The puppet's flaws show us that humanity doesn't ascend through purity, but through struggle with illusion. This is what makes the macabre truth of Pinocchio so haunting. Our own lies are the gatekeepers of transformation. Notice how every time Pinocchio lies, his body betrays him. The external sign, the elongating nose, is a visual manifestation of inner distortion. Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism shows that dishonesty warps reality itself, just as it warps his face. Think of people who hide secrets. Their posture, tone, even their eyes reveal the truth. In this sense, Pinocchio Conspiracy Explained is less about morality and more about metaphysics. Lies corrupt not only the story, but the soul. Yet, paradoxically, these distortions push him closer to gnosis, forcing him to see that truth cannot be escaped. The trickster in Pinocchio isn't limited to lies, it's the whole archetype of mischief, rebellion, and chaos. He constantly resists authority, sneaks away from guidance, and chooses temptation over obedience. This mirrors puppet occult rituals, where initiates are tested through trickery, confusion, and paradox. In occult archetypes in Pinocchio, the trickster is a trial, not a punishment. The lies he tells are less about childish mistakes and more about cosmic initiations, forcing him to navigate illusion until he learns to master it. And isn't that exactly how life works? Illusion first, revelation after. Esoteric hidden messages Pinocchio carries remind us that the trickster archetype is universal. Cultures across time saw in the trickster the power to shake the foundations of order. Without deception, no awakening would come. Pinocchio trickster archetype isn't about shame, it's about the spiritual necessity of being shaken awake. Think about your own life. How many times did being fooled, deceived, or self-deluded eventually push you toward growth? Pinocchio occult symbolism makes clear that even the act of lying, when confronted, can become the doorway to higher truth. In this sense, Pinocchio's nose becomes more than a joke, it becomes an initiation staff, pointing directly to the hidden meaning. The blue fairy occult meaning also plays into this dynamic. Appearing as the one who exposes or corrects his lies, she embodies the test. Will the puppet cling to illusion or embrace truth despite its cost? The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that truth is never given. It must be wrestled from the web of lies we weave. And Pinocchio shows us that this is not a clean process. It is messy, embarrassing, and often humiliating. So when Pinocchio lies, don't see it as mere childish disobedience. See it as the soul caught in the dance of illusion, stretching reality until it snaps back in painful lessons. Pinocchio hidden meaning teaches that truth is forged through trial, not gifted in innocence. The trickster archetype makes sure of that. And just when one trial ends, another tempter emerges, waiting to see if the puppet will resist or fall again. Every seeker eventually meets the tempters, those subtle forces that promise shortcuts, wealth, or pleasure, while secretly binding the soul tighter to illusion. In Pinocchio Esoteric Secrets, these figures appear as the fox and the cat. At first glance, they are simply tricksters of the road, but Pinocchio occult symbolism reveals them as archetypes of corruption. They whisper false promises, lead the puppet astray, and feed on his naivety. This is more than a children's warning about strangers. It is a coded teaching about astral parasites. The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that humanity too meets these tempters, both in the flesh and in the unseen realms. Esoteric fairy tale analysis shows that the fox and the cat embody greed and illusion. They lure Pinocchio with promises of quick fortune. Bury your coins and reap tenfold riches. Haven't we all seen this same trap play out in real life? Shiny promises of instant wealth, success without effort, or happiness without depth. Pinocchio's hidden meaning is clear. These archetypes are not external villains, but mirrors of our own desires. Puppet occult rituals use such figures to show how easily the soul is ensnared when it seeks shortcuts instead of discipline. The dark truth of Pinocchio is that temptation always wears a friendly face. What makes these figures so dangerous is their familiarity. The fox is charming, the cat is pitiable. Together they disarm the puppet with ease. In Pinocchio, conspiracy explained, they become symbols of spiritual predators, forces that disguise themselves as allies while secretly draining energy. This parallels occult teachings about astral entities that feed on fear, desire, or ignorance. Pinocchio and soul imprisonment plays out through these characters, reminding us that liberation cannot be bought with false promises. The esoteric origins of Pinocchio transform the fox and cat into timeless archetypes, not just villains, but warnings. And yet, the blue fairy occult meaning connects here as well. She appears not simply as savior, but as contrast. When Pinocchio follows the fox and the cat, he chooses illusion over guidance, desire over wisdom. This makes the lesson even sharper. In spiritual journeys, distractions always arise just before transformation. Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation sees the fox and cat as archonic forces, tempters who divert the soul from gnosis, keeping it entangled in material illusions. They don't merely steal his coins, they steal his direction, his focus, his chance at awakening. The fox and cat also carry social commentary, encoded in forbidden symbolism in fairy tales. They mirror politicians, merchants, or even spiritual leaders who profit from naivety. Pinocchio occult symbolism warns that corruption is not just metaphysical, it is systemic. Look at modern scams, false gurus, or predatory systems. Don't they operate exactly like the fox and the cat, smiling, promising, and leading countless puppets into loss and despair? The macabre truth of Pinocchio is not locked in the past. It repeats in every generation. Collodi's tale foresaw it, cloaked in playful disguise. There is also a deeper archetypal layer. The fox as cunning intellect without morality, and the cat as blind instinct without direction. Together they represent two extremes that corrupt the seeker, brilliance without heart, and desire without vision. Pinocchio trickster archetype echoes here, for he must learn to see through their games. The esoteric hidden messages Pinocchio carries remind us that every path is lined with such tests. To follow wisdom is to discern between the voice of the guide and the whispers of predators. Most fail, not because the predators are strong, but because the seeker is unprepared. So when we read of the fox and the cat, we are not reading about animals in a fairy tale. We are meeting the very forces that walk beside us every day. They are the distractions in our choices, the false lights on our path, the smiling faces that hide sharp claws. Pinocchio, spiritual symbolism, urges us to see them not as distant villains, but as living archetypes that test us constantly. And just as the puppet stumbles under their influence, so too must we ask, who do we trust when the road forks, and what price do we pay when we choose wrong? At first glance, the marionette theater looks like harmless fun, a stage where puppets dance for laughter and applause. But Pinocchio occult symbolism turns this scene into something darker, a ritual of control disguised as entertainment. The puppet doesn't perform out of freedom but compulsion, strings dictating every movement. Esoteric fairy tale analysis reveals this as a metaphor for humanity itself, trapped in systems that choreograph our actions while we believe we are choosing. The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that life, too, can resemble a theater, where unseen forces orchestrate our roles. Pinocchio esoteric secrets turn the stage into a mirror of existence. The theater master, looming above, embodies the hidden powers shaping the destiny of souls. In Pinocchio, Conspiracy Explained, he reflects the elites, priests, and unseen rulers who keep the masses entertained, distracted, and submissive. The puppet show is not innocent play. It is the perfect image of control. Just as Pinocchio dances for coins, many work tirelessly without ever questioning who benefits from their labor. Puppet occult rituals echo here, showing that control thrives when it feels like amusement. And so the dark truth of Pinocchio whispers that laughter can be the mask of chains. Notice how the other puppets in the theater accept their condition without protest. They are content to dance, repeat, and bow on command. Pinocchio hidden meaning pushes us to ask, how many live exactly this way, never questioning the strings? Collodi seems to warn that conformity is the deadliest prison of all. In Pinocchio and Soul Imprisonment, the theater becomes a symbol of society itself, where obedience is rewarded and rebellion punished. Esoteric hidden messages Pinocchio carries teach that the true initiation begins when one realizes they are on stage and dares to step off. The spectacle also reflects deeper esoteric currents. In occult archetypes in Pinocchio, the marionette theater is a microcosm of the cosmic game, the dance of souls manipulated by higher forces. Some occult traditions describe existence itself as a stage for the gods, where humans act out dramas for their amusement. Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism ties directly into this. The puppet believes himself alive, while the strings reveal he is merely performing a script. The forbidden symbolism in fairy tales is laid bare here. Our laughter blinds us to the fact that we may be no freer than the wooden dolls. Even the applause of the crowd hides a sinister layer. Pinocchio Freemason symbolism suggests the audience represents society. Complicit in the control, they cheer, reward, and thus reinforce the system. Doesn't this mirror how people reward conformity in daily life? Step outside the script, and suddenly applause turns to mockery. The blue fairy occult meaning connects here too, because liberation never comes from the crowd. It comes from guidance that is often invisible, arriving when the initiate dares to reject the spectacle. The macabre truth of Pinocchio insists that applause is not proof of truth, only proof of performance. This theater is not just metaphor, it's an initiation trial. Pinocchio esoteric secrets show that to awaken, one must first realize they are part of a show. The stage is life, the roles are imposed, and the director is unseen. But once the initiate becomes aware, the performance can no longer hold power. Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation tells us that the marionette theater is a false reality, crafted to distract souls from their imprisonment. To escape, one must recognize the stage for what it is and refuse to keep dancing. But that choice is never easy, is it? But just as Pinocchio begins to see the strings, new challenges emerge. Leaving the theater doesn't free him from illusion, it only thrusts him into deeper trials. The esoteric origins of Pinocchio remind us that every initiation moves in stages, from control to temptation to descent. And so, as the puppet stumbles away from the theater, thinking he has escaped, he is swallowed by a far greater force waiting in the abyss. When Pinocchio is swallowed by the whale, most readers see only an adventure, but Pinocchio esoteric secrets expose it as an ancient initiation rite. Across cultures, the descent into the belly of a beast symbolizes death, rebirth, and confrontation with the abyss. Pinocchio whale initiation myth connects him to Jonah swallowed by the great fish, to Inanna's journey into the underworld, and even to Tibetan texts describing the bardo. The dark truth of Pinocchio is that this moment isn't a punishment, it's a forced initiation, a plunge into darkness where the soul confronts itself. Collodi encoded an ordeal older than time itself. Inside the whale, Pinocchio hidden meaning transforms the creature into a cosmic womb. What looks like imprisonment is actually the stage for transformation. Puppet occult rituals often place the initiate in darkness, cutting them off from familiar light so that inner vision may awaken. In this sense, Pinocchio and soul imprisonment becomes paradoxical. The prison becomes the place of liberation. Haven't we all lived moments like this? Times when being swallowed by crisis or despair became the catalyst for our deepest growth. Pinocchio occult symbolism shows that descent is not failure, but initiation. Esoteric fairy tale analysis reveals that the whale is no random monster. It is the archetype of the abyss itself. Its vast belly mirrors the collective unconscious, a sea of forgotten fears and hidden truths. Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation views this as the soul being pulled into the demiurge's domain, forced to confront illusions head-on. This is why the belly of the whale feels both terrifying and sacred. The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that one cannot ascend without first descending. Freedom is earned not by avoiding darkness, but by passing through it. And yet, the blue fairy occult meaning casts a shadow here too. She doesn't save Pinocchio from the whale directly. Instead, the puppet must endure the trial, discover the spark of gnosis within, and act. In Esoteric Hidden Messages Pinocchio, this detail is crucial. Salvation is never handed down, but earned through descent and struggle. The forbidden symbolism in fairy tales is clear. True transformation happens in isolation, when no one can see you and no applause is given. The puppet becomes real not on stage, but in the belly of the abyss. The whale also echoes alchemical symbolism. Pinocchio, Freemason symbolism, frames the belly as the nigredo stage of alchemy, the blackening, the decomposition of the old self. Just as lead must rot before turning to gold, Pinocchio must die as a puppet before awakening. The esoteric origins of Pinocchio tie his suffering to a universal path: death, dissolution, then rebirth. Isn't that how real transformation works? The old must decay before the new can emerge. This is the macabre truth of Pinocchio. The abyss is not the end, but the beginning of becoming. Think of modern parallels. How often do people describe life-changing awakenings coming after their darkest nights? Rock bottom, loss, despair, all are bellies of the whale. Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism reminds us that these descents are not random. They are woven into the very fabric of initiation. Collodi didn't invent this pattern, he revealed it. The puppet's imprisonment becomes our metaphor. We too must face the whale in our own way, swallowed by forces greater than us, stripped of illusion until truth alone remains. And so, when Pinocchio emerges from the whale, he is not the same. He has touched the abyss and lived to tell it. But notice, even this triumph is not the end. The puppet's trials deepen still, for even light can wear a mask. The next figure to appear, luminous and beautiful, is not the beast of darkness, but the radiant blue fairy, whose role may be far more ambiguous than it seems. She appears radiant, almost angelic, the blue fairy, shimmering with promises of salvation. To most, she is simply Pinocchio's helper, but Pinocchio's esoteric secrets reveal her as far more ambiguous. In occult archetypes in Pinocchio, the blue fairy represents Sophia, divine wisdom, yet also carries the shadow of an archon cloaked in light. Pinocchio occult symbolism here asks, is she liberator or jailer? The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that not every luminous figure comes with pure intentions. Light can mislead just as much as darkness, and the blue fairy occult meaning embodies this paradox perfectly. Esoteric fairy tale analysis shows that her interventions are conditional. She rewards obedience, but punishes rebellion, presenting herself as savior, yet demanding compliance. This echoes puppet occult rituals, where guides test initiates through both mercy and severity. Pinocchio hidden meaning suggests that she might be less a motherly helper and more a cosmic examiner. Isn't this strikingly familiar? Many spiritual seekers encounter light figures in visions or teachings that uplift but also bind. Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation warns us to question whether every rescuer truly seeks our freedom or our loyalty. The blue fairy also mirrors the archetype of Sophia, fallen into matter to guide souls upward. Yet her role is not entirely gentle. Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism paints her as both healer and trickster, embodying duality. She resurrects the puppet when he falls, but she also scolds, commands, and manipulates. Esoteric hidden messages. Pinocchio suggests that such figures remind seekers that wisdom often comes wrapped in contradiction. How often have you received advice that felt like both a gift and a chain? The blue fairy whispers this tension. Help can also imprison. In forbidden symbolism in fairy tales, luminous female figures often represent gnosis itself, the hidden knowledge that saves but also wounds. The blue fairy's glow could be a disguise, a test for the puppet's discernment. Pinocchio Conspiracy Explained points out that she always appears at pivotal moments, steering the narrative as if she were not guide but puppet master. Is she granting freedom or simply keeping the wooden boy within a carefully scripted journey. The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that liberation is never simple. It comes with masks, and some masks smile while hiding chains. Think of the way modern culture idealizes saviors, teachers, leaders, even celebrities who promise transformation. Like the blue fairy, they dazzle with charisma, but often demand surrender in return. Pinocchio and soul imprisonment reflects this danger. The very one who promises freedom can deepen the illusion. The esoteric origins of Pinocchio invite us to see her not as pure light, but as the ambiguous Sophia, half fallen, half divine. Her role is to awaken the initiate not by rescuing him, but by forcing him to question whether salvation can ever come from outside. The blue fairy occult meaning also touches on the psychological. She embodies the inner voice of conscience, the anima guiding the seeker. But even conscience can be conditioned, shaped by external authorities. Pinocchio Freemason symbolism may suggest she is the representation of the hidden watcher, the secret guide of initiation. Yet even guides can test with deception, ensuring that the initiate grows not by trust alone, but by discernment. The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that wisdom itself can be both trap and torch, depending on how one receives it. So when the blue fairy appears with her radiant wings and soft words, the initiate is challenged with a deeper question. Do you trust the savior, or do you see through the mask? Pinocchio esoteric secrets insist that even light must be examined, for false dawns abound on the path. And as Pinocchio bows to her guidance, we are left wondering, was he led to liberation, or only to a subtler cage? The answer remains hidden, waiting for the next stage of his transformation. At last, Pinocchio becomes real. The wooden puppet of lifeless matter is given flesh, and most readers cheer as though it were the happy ending of a child's fable. Yet Pinocchio esoteric secrets twist this moment into something far darker. The puppet's reward might not be liberation at all. It might be the tightening of the prison. Pinocchio hidden meaning suggests that flesh is no victory, but a deeper entrapment of the soul. What seems like freedom is work, in fact, another layer of illusion. The macabre truth of Pinocchio whispers that embodiment is both a blessing and a curse. In Pinocchio Gnostic interpretation, the shift from wood to flesh mirrors the soul's descent further into matter. The puppet was at least aware of his strings, awkward and incomplete, a symbol of limitation. But once flesh is granted, the illusion becomes convincing. The body feels autonomous, alive, free, yet it is still bound by mortality, pain, and desire. Pinocchio and soul imprisonment thus takes on a chilling new form, the wooden cage replaced with a softer, more convincing prison. Esoteric fairy tale analysis reveals that this reward may simply deepen the forgetfulness of the soul. Collodi's hidden genius lies in this paradox. On the surface, the transformation looks like triumph, but under occult archetypes in Pinocchio, it mirrors the greatest deception of all, mistaking embodiment for liberation. Puppet occult rituals often involve this very inversion, presenting imprisonment as freedom, so the initiate must awaken to the trick. Pinocchio spiritual symbolism shows that becoming real doesn't mean free. It means the illusion has become complete. Isn't this exactly how life feels? We cling to our bodies as proof of existence, yet every day they betray us with hunger, fatigue, and decay. Think about how modern society celebrates milestones, graduations, careers, marriages, each framed as freedom, but often binding us deeper into obligations. Pinocchio Freemason symbolism plays on this very theme. The puppet is initiated into flesh, not to set him free, but to anchor him into the grand architecture of control. The blue fairy occult meaning resonates here too. Her gift of humanity may be a mask for deeper bondage. The dark truth of Pinocchio is that the soul's longing for reality might actually chain it tighter to matter. Liberation requires more than embodiment. It requires transcendence. Esoteric hidden messages Pinocchio carries remind us that the real boy ending is not a conclusion, but another trial. Flesh brings with it new temptations, new lies, and new illusions. Pinocchio Conspiracy Explained unveils this twist. The puppet was never free, not even at the end. Instead, he was woven deeper into the tapestry of illusion, lulled into believing the game was over. Haven't we all felt this? That the big rewards of life sometimes feel emptier than expected? binding us with responsibilities instead of freeing us. This is why the macabre truth of Pinocchio is unsettling. It mirrors our lives too closely. The transformation also carries alchemical undertones. The wooden puppet becoming flesh echoes the great work, where base matter is transmuted into something higher. Yet, Pinocchio occult symbolism flips the process on its head. Instead of ascending, the transformation drags him deeper into embodiment. The esoteric origins of Pinocchio show that Collodi may have embedded this paradox deliberately, to warn us that not every transmutation leads upward. Sometimes, what looks like alchemy is only disguise. The puppet's flesh is not gold, it is clay, fragile and deceiving. So when we watch Pinocchio celebrate his new life, we are left uneasy. Is he free, or has the illusion simply perfected itself? Pinocchio esoteric secrets leave this question hanging like a riddle, and as we ask it, another thought stirs. If even triumph hides a cage, what does that mean for us, those who believe ourselves free, alive, and real? Perhaps the final trial is not the transformation itself, but the realization that even flesh may not be the end of the strings. Pinocchio's story doesn't end with his transformation. It lingers, like a whisper reminding us that the puppet was never just a character. Pinocchio esoteric secrets point directly at us, suggesting that every human carries strings unseen. Pinocchio hidden meaning is not confined to Collodi's pages, but woven into daily life. We all play roles, dance to rhythms we didn't choose, and follow scripts written long before we were born. The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that the marionette is alive inside each of us, waiting to be noticed. And once seen, the question becomes unavoidable. Who is pulling our strings? Esoteric fairy tale analysis invites us to see society itself as the puppet master. Work schedules, cultural expectations, even the phones in our hands, all act like strings tugging us along. Pinocchio occult symbolism makes this chillingly clear. The world is a vast marionette theater, and most never question the performance. Puppet occult rituals are not staged in hidden temples. They unfold in offices, schools, and living rooms. Pinocchio and soul imprisonment is not just a myth, it's the human condition. To wake up is not to cut all the strings at once, but to recognize they are there. Think of the lies we tell ourselves to keep the illusion intact. I am free. I make my own choices. I know who I am. These phrases echo Pinocchio's nose, stretching longer with every self-deception. Pinocchio trickster archetype lives inside us too, nudging us to face the contradictions we hide. Pinocchio's spiritual symbolism warns that until we confront these lies, the strings remain invisible. Haven't you ever felt that strange pull? The sense that your life is not entirely your own. That eerie recognition is exactly what Collodi encoded, hidden in plain sight. The esoteric origins of Pinocchio suggest that the puppet's journey is an initiation, not just for him, but for the reader. Collodi left esoteric hidden messages Pinocchio carries as keys, daring us to decode them. The blue fairy occult meaning, the whale's belly, the fox and cat, all archetypes designed to reflect our inner struggles. Pinocchio Conspiracy Explained shows the genius of disguising these truths as children's literature. After all, what better way to pass forbidden symbolism in fairy tales than to hide them in bedtime stories no one questions? But the most haunting layer is this: even those who awaken to the strings may not be free. Pinocchio Freemason symbolism reminds us that awareness is only the first step. Cutting strings requires courage, and courage often costs comfort. The macabre truth of Pinocchio is that many prefer the stage, the applause, the safety of being controlled. True freedom feels terrifying because it removes the script. And so countless souls stay in the theater, even after seeing the strings above them. Isn't that the cruelest trick of all? Pinocchio occult symbolism ultimately forces us to ask where our loyalties lie, with the comfort of illusion or the chaos of awakening. The puppet within us all reflects back our choices, our fears, and our hidden longings. Every temptation in Pinocchio's path is still alive today. Greed, deception, false saviors, and even false freedoms. Esoteric fairy tale analysis urges us to recognize these archetypes in our own lives, because until we do, we remain wooden, painted with smiles, and animated by strings we do not see. And so, the story closes not with a happy ending, but with an open question. The puppet strings may be invisible, but they are still there, tugging, pulling, guiding. Pinocchio esoteric secrets leave us haunted, as though Collodi himself is whispering, "The marionette is you." And just when we think the tale is over, the silence deepens into a final riddle. If we are all puppets, then who or what is holding the strings above us even now? So now that you've seen the dark truth of Pinocchio, the strings, the traps, the occult symbolism, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep living like the puppet, letting invisible forces pull your every move? Or will you dare to cut the strings, even if freedom feels terrifying? Pinocchio esoteric secrets don't just describe a wooden boy. They describe us every day in every choice we make. Think carefully. How many of your decisions are really yours? How often do you follow paths that were carved for you by others? Family, society, or hidden systems of control? The puppet within us all is real, and most people never notice him. But now you do. And once you've seen the strings, you can never unsee them. If this story shook something inside you, that's not by accident. Pinocchio occult symbolism was designed to awaken, to disturb, to whisper that your life may be scripted. And here's the challenge. Are you willing to rewrite the script? Or are you still content to bow when the crowd applauds? I want you to sit with these questions, really let them burn for a moment, because the macabre truth of Pinocchio isn't just about him, it's about you. And if you feel that pull in your chest, that strange mix of fear and curiosity, that's the first sign that awakening has begun. So tell me, what string do you most want to cut first? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your answer might inspire someone else who's still trapped in silence. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you won't miss the next dive into forbidden symbolism in fairy tales and esoteric hidden messages the world has buried from you.